Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going straight into a core danger lurking in the digital world. Someone else running their own commands on your computer.
Right. Arbitrary code execution, or ACE.
Exactly. Think of it like, an attacker getting the ultimate remote control of your machine, making it do whatever they want. And we're going to dig into some very current, real-world examples of how these kinds of weaknesses are being used right now.
Yeah, and it's critical because the fallout from arbitrary code execution can be, well, pretty severe.
Right.
It's not just a small problem. It can lead to major data breaches, launching more attacks inside a network, even completely taking over a system.
Yeah.
Understanding how these vulnerabilities work and, importantly, how they're being exploited now is just vital if you want to protect your stuff.
Absolutely vital. And speaking of critical protection, this deep dive is brought to you by Stonefly. They're leaders in enterprise storage, backup, and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions. So if you're looking for secure, maybe ransomware-proof storage, Stonefly actually sells air-gapped and immutable storage options. You can contact sales@stonefly.com to schedule a demo.
Good to know.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with a really serious flaw, one that's gotten a lot of attention recently, affecting Commvault Command Center.
Right. CVE 2025-34028. And what's really striking here is the severity score. It's got a 10 out of 10, the highest possible.
10 out of 10, wow.
Yeah. And the root cause, it's a path traversal vulnerability.
Path traversal. Okay, for listeners maybe not deep in the security weeds, can you break that down like maybe an analogy?
Sure. Think of a website address, a URL, right?
Yeah.
You use slashes to go through different folders or sections.
Yeah.
Path traversal is like an attacker using special characters like ... /ja to kind of trick the system.
Trick it how?
To make it move up and outside the allowed folders, getting access to files, directories, places they should absolutely not be able to see.
Like sneaking out of the public website area into the server's private file system.
Exactly that. It's like finding a hidden door in a website that leads to the back office files. And, path traversal isn't new. It's an old trick.
But still works.
Well, yeah, still a surprisingly big problem. And in this Commvault case, it can be exploited by an unauthenticated attacker.
Unauthenticated meaning they don't need a password. No login at all.
Correct. No credentials needed whatsoever.
Okay, so how do they actually pull this off?
Well, the vulnerability is tied to a specific web endpoint, deploy-webpackage.us.
Okay.
By uploading a specially crafted ZIP file, like a rigged package, to that address, the attacker kicks off a chain reaction.
What's the first step in that reaction?
It starts with something called server-side request forgery, SSRF.
SSRF.
Correct.
So the attacker isn't hitting the Commvault system directly with the final blow, but they trick the Commvault server itself to making a request.
Exactly. They make the Commvault server reach out to an external place the attacker controls.
Uh-huh.
And that malicious ZIP file, once the server processes it, lets the attacker navigate the file system where they shouldn't, using that path traversal we talked about.
And the end result.
Remote code execution, RCE.
Which brings us right back to where we started. The attacker can run any code they want on that Commvault system.
That's it. Essentially full control.
That is pretty bad. Which versions are affected?
This specific one hits Commvault Command Center Innovation Release versions 11.38.0 all the way through 11.38.13d fixed.
Okay.
And credit where it's due, this was found and reported responsibly by security researchers over at Watchtower Labs.
Good catch by them. And I saw CISA's involved too.
Yes, CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, they've added this vulnerability to their KEV catalog.
The known exploited vulnerabilities. That means there's proof attackers are actually using this in the wild.
That's exactly what it means. It's not theoretical. It's happening now, which really amps up the urgency.
Definitely. So CISA's involvement means federal agencies have a deadline.
They do. Federal Civilian Executive Branch Agencies, FCEB, they need to patch this by May 23rd, 2025.
Okay.
But honestly, everyone using those affected Commvault versions should be patching like yesterday.
Right. The deadline is just for the federal agencies. The warning is for everyone. So what's the fix? What should people do?
Commvault has released patched versions, 11.38.20 and 11.38.25.
Good.
And the good news for folks on the innovation release track is that these updates usually get applied automatically.
Usually.
Yeah. But you should always verify. And for organizations with, say, more custom setups or air-gapped environments, they absolutely need to manually ensure these updates are applied.
Makes sense. Anything else? Mitigation advice?
Yeah, besides patching, isolate the command center. keep it off untrusted networks, and implement really strict firewall rules, limit who and what can talk to it.
Basic network hygiene, but critical here.
Right.
Reduce the attack surface. Okay, that's a lot on Commvault. Let's shift gears a bit. There's another set of vulnerabilities, this time impacting the YE PHP framework.
Yeah.
And also Craft CMS, which uses YE.
Yeah, another interesting and worrying scenario. We've got CVE 2024-58136 in the YE framework itself. It's described as an improper protection of alternate path flaw.
Okay, so kind of similar theme to path traversal, accessing things you shouldn't.
Sort of, yeah. It means certain protected parts of the system aren't locked down properly. Unauthorized access is possible.
And how does this connect to Craft CMS?
Well, Craft CMS uses YE underneath. So that YE flaw leads directly to CVE 2025-32432, which is a critical remote code execution vulnerability specifically in Craft CMS.
RCE again. And how is this one being exploited? Is it different?
It is. This one centers around a built-in feature of Craft CMS image transformations.
Image transformations, like when you upload a picture and the website automatically creates thumbnails or different sizes.
Exactly that. Resizing, cropping, that sort of thing. An attacker, again, unauthenticated.
No login needed.
Right. They can send a specially crafted request to the part of Craft CMS that handles these image changes.
And how are they finding vulnerable sites? Are they just spraying requests everywhere?
They're pretty methodical, actually. We've seen them sending specific POST requests to an endpoint, actions assets generate transform.
Okay.
And these requests contain a specific string in the body class. That string acts like a probe, almost.
Like a signal flare. If the site reacts in a certain way to class, the attackers know it might be vulnerable.
Precisely. It helps them fingerprint potentially vulnerable installations. This kind of active scanning just shows how fast attackers jump on new vulnerabilities. You really need to be watching your logs.
Absolutely. So they find a site using this class probe. What's next?
The exploit itself targets how these image transforms are generated. Now, to make it work across different Craft versions, we're talking 3.x, 4.x, and 5.x, they need one more piece.
Which is?
A valid asset ID. Think of it like a unique tracking number for every file or image uploaded to Craft CMS.
Okay, like a serial number for the image.
Kind of, yeah. So attackers are seen just blasting POST requests, trying different IDs, hoping to guess a valid one.
Brute forcing the asset ID?
Essentially, yes. Once they find a valid ID, then they can trigger the remote code execution vulnerability.
And this is happening now, actively.
Oh, yes. These attacks have been observed since February 2025.
And what are they doing once they get RCE?
Their observed method is to download a PHP file onto the compromised server. They're pulling it from a GitHub repository.
A web shell, maybe?
Likely. Initially, the file was called filemanager.php, which is pretty suggestive. Later, they started renaming it to autoloadclassmap.php, maybe to be a bit sneakier.
Trying to blend in.
Exactly. And the concerning part, the estimate is that hundreds of Craft CMS servers are probably already compromised.
Hundreds, wow. That's significant. So for anyone running Craft CMS, what's the immediate action?
Patch. Now, Craft CMS released fixed versions back on April 10th. The versions are 3.9.15, 4.14.15, and 5.6.17.
Okay, update immediately. Anything else?
Check your logs. Look at your firewall logs, your web server logs. Search for suspicious PST requests going to that actions assets generate transform path.
Can specifically look for that class string.
Yes, especially look for class in the request body. That's a strong indicator someone was probing or maybe even succeeded.
Any temporary fixes if someone can't patch right away?
Well, patching is strongly recommended, but you could try blocking requests with that specific payload, class going to that endpoint, at your firewall or WAF. There's also a Craft CMS security patches library that might offer some interim help, but really, update.
Right, those are stopgaps. Update is the real fix. What about Craft Cloud users? The hosted version.
Craft Cloud did configure their global firewall to try and block these specific attack patterns, which is good, but they still strongly advise users to update their actual Craft CMS installations to the latest patched versions. Defense in depth, you know?
Absolutely. Don't rely on just one layer. Okay, so we've looked at Commvault, we've looked at Craft CMS and YE. Two pretty different systems, both hit by RCE exploits. What's the big picture here?
Well, connecting it all back, These examples just hammer home how much control attackers gain with arbitrary code execution.
Right.
Whether it's enterprise backup software or a popular web content management system, getting RCE means they can potentially steal data, install backdoors, use the system to attack other things.
Use as a jumping off point.
Exactly, or just completely take over critical systems. It shows attackers aren't just after quick data grabs anymore. They often want persistence, control, turning your server into part of their infrastructure.
And these aren't isolated freak incidents, are they?
Not at all. We mentioned the other Commvault web server flaw, CVE 2025-3928, also being exploited, and you constantly see botnets, ransomware gangs, leveraging all sorts of vulnerabilities, often RCV or path traversal flaws.
So these attack types, path traversal, RCE, they're common tools in the attacker's toolkit.
Very common. They consistently target these across all kinds of software because, well, they work and the payoff is potentially huge.
It really paints a picture of a constant battle, doesn't it? Patch one thing, they find another.
It absolutely is. It's a continuous cycle. Requires constant vigilance, keeping things updated, watching logs, having good defenses, and understanding that even small seeming flaws can sometimes be chained together by attackers to create a really big risk.
Yeah, the sum being greater than the parts. Well, this has been incredibly insightful. A bit scary, maybe, but definitely important stuff. Understanding how ACE works and seeing these real-world exploits. It makes the need for patching and monitoring very clear.
Absolutely. Good security hygiene isn't optional these days.
Right. And that leaves us with a final thought for you, our listener. Think about how interconnected everything is. A flaw in a foundational piece of software, like the YE framework, can ripple outwards and create vulnerabilities in lots of applications built on top of it, like Craft CMS. What does that really tell you about how critical secure coding practices are from the very start? And about how vital rapid, widespread patching is across the entire software supply chain you depend on? Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought.
And this has been a deep dive brought to you by Stonefly. They're leaders in enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions. Remember, if you're looking for secure, ransomware-proof storage options like air-gapped and immutable storage, check out Stonefly. You can contact sales@stonefly.com to schedule a demo.